When I first started doing this social media channel, I, of course, went around and snapped up all the my handle on all the different social media platforms, and I bought the domain name and all of that stuff because that's just naturally something that you want to do anytime you're doing anything under a specific name. But I didn't really have an idea of what I would do with the domain name because I already have a website. The idea was that people would find me in this more personal way, and hopefully if they connected with my story and were interested in what I'm doing with my life and maybe needed my services, they might find their way into becoming a client. And so I didn't really know what I could do with a second website that would be any different really than the website that I already have, which offers some information about me and how I work and services that I offer and prices for those services and a portfolio of work to show my style and obviously information to contact me. So I just couldn't think of what I could do with a second website that wouldn't just be repeating the same thing under a different name and, But I recently came up with this idea that I wanted to make the website for this domain something a little bit more personal and do it in a way that was less sort of polished professional looking and more just experimental and creative looking. One of the mediums that I really like is collage, and during the pandemic I was making not a lot, but I made some collage because I had so much time on my hands that I got to do a lot of things that I don't usually have time to do. And I also sort of had to work with things that I had already because it wasn't a time for spending money on starting new hobbies. And I happened to have a huge stack of National Geographic magazines, as so many of us do, I think. And so I made a bunch of collages. And I really like the medium. So the idea that I had for this website was to create an illustrated timeline of the events of the story that I've been telling. And initially, I wanted it to be a horizontal scrolling website. But after asking a lot of other people what they thought of that, because it is really unusual, most websites do not scroll horizontally, or not intentionally at least. But I have seen it a few times, and I always really like it when I see it. It's really striking and different, and it gives you an idea of continuity in a way that I forget the word, top to bottom scrolling website does not give the same idea of sort of moving through time. And so I thought about that a lot. I ended up, everyone was against it. Everyone that I asked and every place that I asked for an opinion on it was like, I don't think that's a great idea. And for a variety of reasons, but most of them being sort of like, it's against the rules. I finally decided against it because in my Googling around, I saw someone sharing that the biggest concern they would have is that someone would land on the site and not figure out that it was horizontal scrolling and would then immediately leave because they thought it was broken. And I remembered that one of the horizontal scrolling websites that I found, that is almost exactly what happened when I opened that website. And then I somehow stumbled across the scroll, and then I really liked it. But I almost left that site. I think I probably tried harder than some people would, and that is the fear. You really don't want people to land on your website and immediately leave. So I did a digital collage that I hope is a good illustration for the story that I have been telling. And one of the things that it did for me, which was really interesting and fun, was that I started out using the image that I have used in my banner for all social media as the hero area on the homepage. And I wanted to add to it to make the collage aesthetic obvious from the start, because really it's just an image that has been separated from its background and slapped onto a different type of background that is unexpected, and that is a collage, but it's not, you're not using a lot of layers for it. Usually in a collage you want to have more elements put together from various sources. So I added some details with a cloud and a seagull flying over. And I chose a seagull because when I was visiting Genoa and I was staying in the historic center, the only birds that I could see or hear from where I was staying were seagulls. And to be perfectly honest, that was not my favorite thing. I find the sound of seagulls to be a little bit obnoxious and a little bit sad. And so I was really when I was there, one of the things that I was noticing is that, being that I'm used to living in the hills and hearing a lot of bird song from a variety of lovely birds, I was not particularly attached to living in an area where the predominant sound was going to be seagulls. But I chose a seagull because it was realistic to the scene, but not because it was a bird that I had some kind of special attachment to. And then as I was working on the rest of the images, I kept on adding seagulls back in for a number of different reasons, and partly just to keep the theme going throughout. Because as much as I am not really attached to seagulls, I do love a symbol that connects. And even though it is weirdly like a less than joyful connection to Genoa, it is something that has stood out in my mind a lot, that I just remember the seagulls like every morning, because I would wake up so early before the sun came up. And so the first thing that would happen as the sun is coming up is the birds start to, wake up and fly around and make a lot of noise. And it was all seagulls. And so I kept the seagull going through the images. And at the end of it, I thought to myself, I really wonder what kind of symbolism seagulls do have, because I also do really love symbols. I love the idea of the collective unconscious that sort of describes that we all inherently understand or have some sort of subconscious awareness of what things represent symbolically. And that is why they're so effective in, for example, advertising. So obviously I had to look at the symbolism for the seagull, because it had sort of accidentally become the symbol on this website. And so it turns out that the symbolism of the seagull is freedom, adaptability, and communication, which, as it turns out, is absolutely perfect for what I'm doing here. I would love to hear what symbol, whether it's an animal or a shape or a color or anything, what symbol you feel really attached to, whether or not you even have an understanding of what the ancient meaning associated with it is.